it was so intimidating because I was like, man, this is the coolest place I've ever been. And it was like it was like I was stuck in a dream, like this awesome dream. In second grade, I was a D student, and I was labeled as a slow kid. And I don't mean slow as in how fast I could run, slow as in mentally slow. And I was put in classes with other slow kids, and I was labeled by my friends and really the whole school. And I went to a small school as a slow kid. I struggled with dyslexia and ADHD. Neither one of those were diagnosed in the 80s. That wasn't well into the 90s before they started diagnosing those conditions at my school. I went to a really small school. But I wanted more. I had drive. I wanted to be with my friends. At the end of the year, my friends who had this awards banquet where they handed out awards for A, B honor roll, A honor roll. And almost every one of them would get called to the front. They'd announce their names, what they won. There would be cheers, claps from students and parents. I always wanted to be celebrated like that, and I never was because I was constantly barely making C's. It was a fight for me to not make D's, which I did a time or two, and they wanted to hold me back into another class. Well, I didn't want to be in that class because my friends, my support system were in my current class. My parents had fight to keep me in that class, and I had a teacher that fought for me because she saw how much effort I would put in. I was working harder than anyone in my classroom. I was doing all the small things I needed to be doing to get better. And she saw that in me, and she started tutoring me outside of school and in the summers. So from that point forward, I never truly had a summer. I went to school in the summers until I was a teenager. Then I started working in the fields. We're from an agriculture town, so we could work from the age of 12 years old, chopping weeds in the field, which is what I did until I started driving tractors and doing more other type of work for farmers. But that tutoring, those summers of tutoring by that teacher were very impactful for me because I finally had someone who believed in me, and I finally believed in myself. Because at one point I just thought, oh, I'm just a slow kid. I'm never going to amount to much. So I finally made the A-B honor roll. I believe that was my 8th grade year. I made the A-B honor roll. First time I got to be celebrated. It was a much quieter celebration because at that point in your life, I think you're expected to be the A-B honor roll. Then I wanted to go into the Air Force Academy. So my last 2 years of high school, I was straight A's. And I thought, okay, this is it. I got over this. Then I didn't get in the Air Force Academy because my test scores were too low. So I enlisted. Well, before that, I tried college out for a few years and it did not work out. I lost my support system. I lost my discipline. I had that routine discipline down. Like I didn't have summers. I worked in the fields, studied, I was tutored. All these things I was doing because I was driven. And then I got into college and my support system changed. It actually disappeared on me. So I used that as an excuse, not really intentionally. It's just what happened. I didn't have that disciplined mindset. So I enlisted in the Navy, and I became a very, very good sailor. In fact, I won Sailor of the Year for my carrier air group. I fit in the Navy as well as anyone's ever fit in the Navy. I was a sailor. And when I first joined the Navy, we were what we call A school, which is where you learned your job. It's right after boot camp, right before they send you to the fleet. And one of the jobs they mentioned in our rating, which is our job, was there's potentially a job at NASA. For people who get out with this training and education and experience, you could go work for NASA as a spacesuit technician, because we did aviation gear, pilot's gear, and parachutes and flotation devices. And this job, there weren't very many civilian applications for it other than NASA, but they told us this and they attached the fact that there was very few of these jobs available. That there may be a couple jobs available, every 4 to 5 years. So, and there's thousands of us. There's thousands of us in the Navy. There's thousands of us in the Air Force, Marines. There's all these, the same job in all 4 branches. So we're competing against, I don't know how many thousands, 4,000 or 5,000 maybe people. Not everybody wanted that job, but I would assume most people did. So I made, right then and there at A school, I made this commitment, and I started visualizing myself working at NASA. I went home and I told my parents, when I get out of the Navy, I'm going to work at NASA. When I got married, or before I got married, when I met my wife and we were dating, I told her, one day I'm going to work at NASA. And she was supportive, but I can tell she didn't believe me, and there was kind of a chuckle inside of her. She's like, NASA? She didn't know the details of my childhood, but if she had only known that I was a D student at one point in my life, and I was mostly a C student my entire school career up until high school. So a D to C student working at NASA, yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? So I worked towards it. Everything I did, I worked towards that one goal. Then in 2008, I was getting out 8 years in the Navy. I graduated college. I've gotten some very, very specific certifications that related to NASA. I got some more industry certifications that would help me in other parts of the industry. And I didn't know if there was going to be a job open. I had already applied and interviewed for other jobs, and I was almost to the point of accepting an offer for another job. And grant, this is during the 2008-09 crisis, where there were very little jobs available. This was the housing plummet, and the recession and all that happened in 2008-09. And my master chief told me I was an idiot for getting out. Like, this is the best place to be right now during this recession. Like, there's no jobs available. You have a family. Like, why aren't you getting out? And I was like, well, it's what I want to do. It's the best thing for me and my family at this point. Though I love the Navy, I did not get out of the Navy kicking and screaming. Like, I wanted to stay in. So I was in what we call a paraloft, where we pack parachutes in this big, long building where all these parachute tables are at. People were packing. And I was walking through there. I didn't work there at the time. I was visiting some friends. I worked in another building. And I was a project manager, so I didn't work in my job anymore. I was working outside my job as a project manager. And the phone rings as I'm talking to a friend. And the guy who answers the phone is a chief. He looks over at me and he's like, Petty Officer Lisenby, aren't you fixing to get out of the Navy? Didn't you drop your paperwork to get out? I was like, yes, Chief, I did. Come over here, talk to this guy. So I pick up the phone, and it was NASA. So, hey, we got 2 slots open right now at NASA. We're looking for people in your rate. Would you be interested in interviewing? Now, at this time, I didn't know what manifesting was, but I had visualized this. I had thought about it. I had prayed about it. I had meditated about it. When I would drive to work every morning, I would think, I'm going to work at NASA. I'm going to work at NASA. And through the powers it may be, this one occurrence where I wasn't even supposed to be in that building that day. I walked through, and the phone rings, and it was NASA on the phone. And that chief just happened to know that I dropped my paperwork like a few weeks prior to that to get out of the Navy. So I flew to Houston. and applied. And I was surrounded. We were in this conference room where all the spacesuits from all the previous generations of astronauts. You have the Apollo, the Gemini, the Space Lab, the shuttle, and about 5 or 6 other spacesuits that I wasn't aware of. We're all surrounding this case, and they're real life spacesuits. And this gentleman who was interviewing me, his back was towards the spacesuits, and I was facing the spacesuits, facing him. And it was so intimidating because I was like, man, this is the coolest place I've ever been. And it was like I was stuck in a dream, like this awesome dream. And this man looked at my resume and said, you have a college degree, and he started naming my certifications off. Like, why are you applying for a spacesuit technician position? And I was like, okay, that's what the position was. Like, I want to work at NASA. He said, I know, but we have a quality manager position. We have a project manager position. Would you not want to apply for those instead? And I was like, well, do they pay more? He's like, yeah, they pay twice what the spacesuit technician job pays. Well, absolutely, yeah, I want to apply for that. Okay. Well, the interview went great. The next day, I flew home, and I don't even think I got to the house yet before they're calling me, offering me the position. And not only did they offer me the position, but it was $20,000 or $30,000 more than I thought we were going to get paid. And so I accepted, moved to Houston, and the rest is history. 2 years later, that program was canceled. So I did leave NASA 2 years later, but it was due to government funding. But it was one of the best times in my life working those 2 years at NASA, and I'll never forget it. And I can tell some of the coolest stories from that time when we were building these spacesuits out for these astronauts. It was a great moment. So if a D student can work at NASA, anyone can. So whatever job you're wanting right now, I don't care what your past was, what your history is, we can get you there. This is what Delta 5 does. We're gritty people, know our goals, and we do everything we need to do day in, day out to reach those goals. If you need help, if you need some discipline, if you need just some advice, give us a call, Delta 5.